Lubici's father lived in a smoke-filled village called Chimney Town. A common laborer, he would zoom through the smoke-filled streets with Lubici seated in his arms. He used to regale the residents of the town with a tale about the stars veiled by the smoke. Alas, nobody believed him. They lived in the town of nights after all and knew nothing about stars or whether they even existed. Slowly, his audience reduced to the point where no one was interested in his stories. With unfulfilled hopes. This was before the town of nights saw its last night. One fateful smoke-filled night of Halloween, a peculiar sparkling object falls from the sky. The energy surrounding the object pulsates like a beating heart, attracting mounds of garbage in the town's landfill site to form an electrically charged tornado. What emerges from the phenomenon is a gigantic monster, completely made of garbage. He makes his way to the town where Halloween celebrations are in full swing. The town residents, mistaking the monster for a human dressed in a well-thought-out costume, welcome him to join the celebrations. As the children count their Halloween spoils, post-celebration, Garbage Man is astounded to discover that the peculiar-looking creatures are all humans dressed in costumes. They ask him to take his mask off and he cowers, afraid that he will scare them if they find out that he is not human. Alas, his secret is not safe for long when one girl tugs at his sleeve to reveal rusty barbed wires in place one would expect a human arm to be. Everyone rushes to a distance, taken aback by the peculiar revelation. The town is run by inquisitors, a team of peacekeepers who may not be too happy to find the town residents associating with the Garbage Man. Everyone scurries off with the Garbage Man pleading with them to let him explain. He runs into a girl in one of the alleys and asks for help. The girl assists him in escaping, just in time before the inquisitors arrive. She diverts them to a different path, allowing the Garbage Man to flee and hide in a trash can. As the inquisitors continue their search, the Garbage Man nervously waits in his hiding place. His curiosity gets the better of him when he accidentally opens a chute in the trash can, causing him to fall through the pipes into a large dumpster. At the same time, a garbage truck arrives, emptying the contents of the dumpster including the Garbage Man, and drives off. Meanwhile, Mr. Sook counsels Lubuchi not to look up at the sky too much. His occupation as a chimney sweep would put him and his family's future in danger if he kept gazing at the sky. The laborers are on their way off after a hard day of work. Lubici, despite being just a kid, has taken over his father's role of providing for his family, and that means working even on Halloween. He is quite cheery about it and doesn't think much of what his mother would say when she saw the soot on his face, and realized he was working instead of playing with his friends. On his way home, he hears the Garbage Man's pleas for help as the truck passes by below the bridge he is on. Lubici parkours his way over to the garbage truck and is luckily able to climb on. He fails to get the driver's attention, and resorts to pulling the Garbage Man out himself. Upon realizing that the Garbage Man is not human, Lubici is terrified. He flings pieces of trash at the Garbage Man who eventually succeeds in calming him down enough to have a conversation. However, the calm is short-lived when the two realize that they are headed straight for the town incinerator. Lubici gets stuck in the trash and the Garbage Man struggles to pull him out. They watch in horror as the truck dumper starts to tilt toward the huge fire, dropping garbage into the blazing inferno. Lubici's foot comes loose and the two frantically climb over the rapidly flowing trash. The dumper continues to tilt and just before they fall and meet an unfortunate end, Lubici and Garbage Man grab onto a wire hanging over the truck. Lubici yells at the Garbage Man to let go. After all, the incinerator is where garbage goes. The Garbage Man tells him he can't, parts of him are recyclable. The combined weight on the wire causes it to snap and sends the two hurling through the incinerator, screaming for their lives. Fortunately, they land in a mining cart away from the inferno. Lubici is frustrated. He hurls his safety helmet away, which sets their mining cart in motion, causing the two to hold on for dear life. As the cart hurls through barricaded tunnels and tracks, it leads them into a smoke-free area of the town. Lubici is too stunned to speak as he takes in the beauty of a clear blue sky and a sparkling world. The beautiful sight, however, does not make up for the fact that Lubici now has to walk all the way home. During the walk, he asks the monster to be his friend. Garbage Man is confused about the word friend and Lubici explains it to him. He introduces himself to the monster and asks for his name in return. After Lubici realizes the monster doesn't have a name, he names the monster Pupel Halloween and invites it home. They're suddenly interrupted by a small explosion behind them which reveals Scoop, a mine bandit. He is looking for plant fossils, a peculiarity that is quite rare to be found in chimney towns. Scoop blabbers on and tells the two practically everything about himself. He then tells them that he will grant them 3 wishes since they forced him to reveal 3 secrets about himself. Lubici and Pupel simply ask him to show them a way out of the mines. Scoop obliges and simply causes a wall to explode, revealing a way out. Lubici announces that he is home, causing his mother to wheel herself over to the door and see him scrubbing away at Pupel. He says he was out playing with his friend and introduces Pupel to his mother. She curiously observes Pupel, noticing the non-human peculiarities in his posture. Nonetheless, Lubici's mother calls them in for dinner. Later that night, as Lubici and Pupel snore on, the viewers are introduced to a moment in Lubici's past. In the past, Lubici's father, Bruno, would work with him to create glass bead bracelets while simultaneously teaching how smoke functions. As father and son, the two shared a unique relationship. After working a full day at his tailor shop, Bruno was one to always make time for his son. Back in the present, a search begins for Pupel. The next day, Lubici pleads with his boss Dan at work to keep Pupel there. It is dangerous for him to be roaming the streets with the inquisitors always on the move. Dan sternly looks at the two and tells Lubici to get to work, assuring him that he will take care of the situation. He orders Pupel to follow him. They walk cautiously through the streets, avoiding inquisitors. Pupel eventually finds himself in a tailor's shop. Dan holds up a torn garment and flings it to Pupel. He tells him to learn how to sew and drops a few coins as a deposit. The shop was abandoned by the owner a year ago, so Pupel would not have to worry about anyone finding him and getting him in trouble. Dan tells him that this is the first time he has seen Lubici with a friend. He leaves with a note to tell Pupel to cover himself with a blanket. Apparently, Dan is quite fearful of monsters. At the end of the day, the chimney sweeps collect around a mountain of repaired clothes that they had initially thrown out. Lubici searches for Pupel, who is hiding behind a wall, overlooking the scene. He eagerly walks over to Pupel, who tells Lubici that he got a job repairing clothes at an abandoned tailor's shop. Lubici asks whether Pupel would like to see where he works. Pupel agrees under the condition that he would be disguised, one that turns out to be a simple dusty sack which constantly causes Pupel to sneeze as the two travel to Lubici's work. As the two climb a long ladder toward a chimney, Pupel notices Lubici's shaking legs. He inquires whether Lubici is afraid of heights and advises him to not look down. Lubici tells him he doesn't anymore, not since he dropped his dad's bracelet. They finally make it to the top of the chimney and behold the entire town below them. Lubici tells Pupel about a sky filled with stars beyond the roof of smoke over their heads. It's a fairy tale told by his father that he hasn't been able to prove right or wrong. Lubici reflects on the days his father would tell this story in the streets. The town residents would urge him to stop before the inquisitors got him, and his father would not care. One day, a drunk man had had enough of Bruno's false stories. He stumbled ahead and grabbed Lubici's wrist, forcing his glass bead bracelet to break and scatter on the ground. Bruno had tackled the man to the ground, having received several injuries himself. Back at home, Lubici stared at the broken beads which led Bruno to wrap his bracelet around his son's wrist. Lubici's mother, sick with an incurable disease, coughed in the background, causing Lubici to lose his short-lived euphoria. However, his father had urged him to continue to have hope. He urged his son to continue searching for a star in the smoky sky. Everyone had one short chance to witness a star before it disappeared, and Lubici must always look at the sky so as not to miss his chance. It didn't matter if no one else was searching the skies. All that mattered was that one day Lubici would find hope in the sky, beyond the dark clouds. Back in the present, Lubici tells Pupel never to share this story with anyone or Pupel would be bullied. From that point on, their friendship continues to flourish. One fateful day, Pupel is on his way to work when he is stopped in his tracks by a couple of kids who are Lubici's age. They recognize him from Halloween night. They inquire how Pupel knows Lubici and are surprised to know the two are friends. Apparently, Lubici had only had time for work after his father passed away. Pupel is taken aback by this new revelation. Lubici never mentioned that his father had passed away. The town kids continue to tell him how Bruno disappeared one night. He was drunk and standing in a restricted area at the edge of the town when he fell into the sea and was taken by a monster. This incident happened a year ago. The kids debate among themselves why Lubici didn't take over his dad's shop. They have the notion that chimney sweeping pays better, hence Lubici chose the latter. Pupel jumps to his defense, telling them that Lubici is trying to see stars in the sky, which is why he had chosen this occupation. This earns him a punch from one of the kids, Antonio, who angrily dismisses Pupel's statement, claiming that stars aren't real. Antonio is strangely hot-tempered, landing blow after blow on Pupel's tin face and eventually knocking him out. Pupel falls into the drainage canal and floats away while the other kids try to hold back a very angry Antonio. Lubici had warned Pupel not to mention the fairy tale. Alas, Pupel hadn't listened. The town kids tip off the inquisitors about Lubici and Pupel's acquaintance. Meanwhile, Lubici heads over to Pupel's shop to ask for a stitch on his torn sleeve. Pupel is nowhere to be found. As Lubici searches for his friend, Mr. Su, his co-worker steps out from the shadows. He inquires Lubici about his continued friendship with the garbage man. Lubici happily admits that he and Pupel are still in touch. Mr. Su then inquires whether it was Dan who gave Pupel his tailoring job. Lubici agrees again, acknowledging Dan's good nature. Dan used to help out Lubici's father too. Mr. Su contemplates for a bit, and then advises Lubici to stay away from Pupel or the inquisitors might get curious. Lubici nods nonchalantly, not thinking too much of the supposed warning. Mr. Su walks out. Lubici sits on one of the chairs in the shop, thinking about where Pupel could be. He looks over at the sewing machine and reflects on a fond memory of his father. Lubici had been throwing a tantrum about his lost hat when his father had urged him to search on the roof of the house. Lubici's fear of heights had sent his legs shivering, but he did find the hat on the roof just as his dad had predicted. However, the ladder had suddenly collapsed with Lubici's worst fear of falling coming true. His father had caught him in his arms, protecting him from a traumatic fall. In the present, we find Lubici fast asleep, comforted by the memories of his father when suddenly Pupel walks in, dazed and limping. Lubici jumps awake and is startled to see Pupel holding his broken ear in his hand. Pupel assures him that it's nothing, he is just happy to see Lubici again. Apparently, Pupel makes the world a dirtier place. Lubici frowns at his words and demands to know who said that to him. Pupel dismisses his question. He may not be able to put his ear back, but at least he has one more to hear from. As Lubici heads home, he is surprised to see Inquisitor vehicles outside his house. He ducks out of sight and peeks into his house to find two Inquisitors questioning his mother about his whereabouts. They leave her with a warning to stop searching for stars or he might meet the same fate as his father. Lubici's mother is shocked. She demands to know if they eliminated her husband, attempting to rise from her wheelchair. The Inquisitors do not answer her and slam the door behind them. Lubici runs into the house to hold his mother who collapses on the floor. She pulls him into a hug and pleads with him not to stand out anymore. She cannot afford to lose any more family. Lubici stares into space, as speechless as his mother at the Inquisitor's revelation. It is revealed that Mr. Su is one of the Inquisitors who have been on a mission to wipe out any heretics. Dan is their next target. Mr. Su, using his role as a chimney sweep, shoots a dart into Dan's neck while he works, causing him to lose consciousness and fall from a great height. One of the co-workers rushes to break his fall, but Dan has lost consciousness with blood pooling beneath his head. The sweepers stare in shock as paramedics show up at the scene unusually quickly. A friend of Lubici's mother and the same girl who helped Pupel escape earlier, spies Inquisitors' uniforms beneath the paramedic robes. She springs to action, calling for a stretcher and whisking Dan away to treat him on her own, ignoring the calls of the paramedics. Fortunately, Dan survives the fall. The chimney sweeps contemplate what would have caused the incident. They come to the conclusion that Lubici's association with Pupel caused the Inquisitors to target Dan. Lubici wordlessly listens to the accusations and runs out of the room, unable to take it anymore. As he is walking in the street, he passes by Antonio's gang. Antonio runs out to confront Lubici, taunting him for his friendship with Pupel. He accuses Lubici of lying that he washes Pupel every day, and continues to degrade his dream of seeing stars in the sky. It slowly dawns on Lubici that Pupel told Antonio about the fairy tale. That is what caused him to get beaten up. Lubici clenches his fists in anger and runs off. Meanwhile, Pupel finishes sewing Lubici's torn sleeve, just in time for Lubici to walk into the shop. Pupel greets him cheerfully, but is surprised to get a cold response in return. Lubici questions how Pupel is so stinky already even though he scrubs him every day. He accuses Pupel of being the reason for Lubici being called a liar and for all the misfortune that has fallen on Dan. Lubici tells Pupel that he never should have helped a garbage man. Pupel keeps shaking his head and apologizing. As Lubici walks away, Pupel breaks down, crying as he looks at Lubici's mended shirt in his hands. With broken spirits, the two end up going their separate ways for a while. Lubici, back to his job as a chimney sweep, and Pupel, back to the landfill site he was born in. They both seem to have lost a part of themselves in their ended friendships and cannot find a way to mend things. That is until Pupel makes a startling discovery in the landfill site. He heads back to Lubici's house to reveal his findings. Lubici is still bruised from their quarrel earlier and hides in the shadow of his house, not wanting to confront Pupel. Pupel explains that he is just there to return something that belongs to Lubici. He explains how the town drainage canal leads to the landfill site outside the town where he was born. Since he is made of garbage, Pupel has had no trouble wading through stinky mountains of garbage. He resolved to find Lubici's dad's bracelet which Lubici mentioned had fallen into the drainage canal during his early days as a chimney sweep. Pupel had spotted a sparkling object in the landfill site. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was a shard of glass that was reflecting something. That is when Pupel discovered that Bruno's bracelet had been in him all this time. It was attached to a wire on his head and had been hidden by his ragged hat. As Pupel proceeds to yank the bracelet off, Lubici runs forward and stops him. There is a possibility that the bracelet powers Pupel's brain and without it he might pass away. Lubici persuades Pupel to stick around. During their conversation Pupel rubs his nose. Lubici instantly recognizes the gesture to be the same one his father used to do. He cautiously calls out to his dad, inquiring if it's really him in the form of a garbage man. His eyes pool up with tears as Lubici breaks down, hugging his dad, exclaiming how much he has missed him. Pupel silently stares on, gently breaking to Lubici that he is just Pupel Halloween, not Bruno. Lubici stands back, sniffling. He is heartbroken and attempts to rub his eyes, trying to get rid of the stream of tears. Suddenly a memory of Lubici rubbing his teary eyes as a small child rushes through Pupel's heart. He is taken aback by the sudden wave of emotions he feels. Lubici is surprised, not understanding what's wrong. Apparently, Pupel's heart starts to attract a very large piece of garbage from the depths of the sea beyond the town. The garbage is actually a sunken ship that the Inquisitors portrayed as a monster to scare the townspeople and remove their belief about the existence of an outside world. Lubici realizes that perhaps his father's fairy tale wasn't just a fairy tale after all. It was his actual story. Perhaps he really did see the stars. Lubici resolves to make it possible for the rest of the town to witness the stars too, and the two head over to Scoops to fulfill the last two wishes he granted them during their first meeting. He wants Scoop to give him some of his smokeless explosives so Lubici can explode the smoke from the sky. Scoop eventually caves and tells Lubici the history behind Chimney Town. The town's inception was a consequence of the Letter family wanting to create a disposable currency called the L so that no one would hoard money and be the cause of unrest among people. The family had built chimneys all over the town to blot out the outside world and remove any concept of a world beyond Chimney Town from the minds of people. This was so the central bank could never find them and they could continue using the L freely. Scoop's grandfather had told him this story which he accidentally blabbed to someone in a bar one fateful day. That someone turned out to be Bruno, Lubici's father. Scoop then reveals barrels of smokeless explosives for Lubici to use and they all get to work. Lubici and the team fashion a hot air balloon that would go up to the sky and reveal the stars. As they get to work on the ship, they attract shoals of inquisitors and town people. Lubici's mother wheels herself to the front of the crowd to witness her son continuing his father's dream. She tells him that she believes him and makes him promise that he would come back once he finds the stars. Meanwhile, the inquisitors attempt to capture the heretics, who now consist of most of the chimney sweeps and Lubici's former rival Antonio. He urges him to find the stars for he has witnessed them with his own eyes. Antonio had been filled with rage because he did not want Lubici to have the courage to stand up and bear witness to the outside world when he himself had stayed quiet. Soon the ship takes flight, its anchors broken free by the earnest town people. Lubici and Pupel travel into the smoke-filled sky, straight into the true depiction of the fairy tale that Lubici's father had narrated to him eons ago. They battle the strong currents of the ocean above the clouds with the wind tossing and turning their vessel. Soon they reach the top of the smoke, with an ocean above and an ocean below. They have nowhere to go but up. Pupel and Lubici release the barrels of the explosives which float away from them into the night sky. Suddenly a shift in the wind direction causes the barrels to get tangled with the ship's anchor chains. Lubici resorts to climbing the chain to free the barrels, reliving the moment he had lost his hat on the roof where his dad had instructed him not to look down. Pupel speaks Bruno's words, his memory causing him to reflexively hold out his arms to catch Lubici if he falls. Lubici succeeds in freeing the barrels from the ship's anchor and falls back into Pupel's arms. They fly off, gaining a distance from the barrels which explode magnificently, revealing a breathtaking starry night sky. The townspeople are rendered speechless as they witness the stars in all their glory. Bruno had been right all along. On the ship, Pupel places Lubici's hat back on his head, calling him by Bruno's nickname for him Squirt one last time before crumbling to a heap on the ground. Lubici, teary-eyed, falls to his knees. He feels as though he has lost his dad all over again. Suddenly a curious heart-shaped object floats atop the heap of garbage that was initially Pupel's body. It beats in front of Lubici's face as if it's his dad's final goodbye to him, and floats off to join the million other stars in the sky. Lubici floats back to the ground and embraces his mother among the other happy town people. The inquisitors are instructed to stop the smoke. It is time for the people of Chimney Town to finally face their future.